Hello, everybody. If you are here to explore storytelling in B2B, you are in the right place. My name is Sarah Griesenbach, founder of the B2B Writing Institute. We're a small organization about 2 years old, and we train writers to create really excellent B2B marketing content. And today is really important because I think storytelling often gets a bad rap. None of us, and especially none of our prospects, are pulling up a really good piece of content while we're relaxing around the fire with a drink at the end of the day. So sometimes calling them stories feels really confusing and even misleading. And it can result in a lot of out there introductions for your white papers if we don't have the right context going into using them. So today we have three really brilliant minds in writing and marketing who are going to break it down for us. And I think the goal is to really pull out the pieces of storytelling that are essential for B2B and then apply them in a really effective, non-cheesy way. And that way you're creating content people don't mind reading, that actually sucks them in because it's relevant and fun for what they're trying to do at work. And it helps us connect that human side of B2B because that's what B2B is built and written for. So I don't want to take time away from Grace, Diane, and Jay today. I'll just share two notes. First, the replay for today's event will be available within 24 hours in Podia. You'll get an email when that's ready. And also we're going to have time for Q&A after each of our speakers today. So be generous with your curiosity and just pop that in the chat and I'll save those as we go. So first up is Grace Baldwin of Rhubarb Copy, who's a B2B SaaS writer. And I think she's going to bring just the perfect framing for understanding how stories fit into the marketing that you're already doing. So Grace, I'm going to send it to you to share your screen. Whatever you have planned for us.
Perfect. Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Grace. Like Sarah said, I am a B2B SaaS copywriter. And today I'm really excited to be here. I've been watching the B2B Writing Institute for a couple of years I'm really excited to be here and to be part of all of this and to actually talk about, okay, how you can tell the right story in your B2B marketing, because this is something that over the last several years of working in enterprise SaaS, I have become pretty passionate about and have realized that where storytelling goes wrong in a lot of cases is because we're ultimately telling the wrong story. So today we're going to cover, it's going to be a lot. We've got 20 minutes of me talking and then 10 minutes of Q&A, but it's going to be a journey. So by the end of this presentation, you should really know, okay, who is the real hero of your business's story? Right now, I think we position the company as the hero, but I want to argue otherwise. You'll also learn, okay, how to shift the perspective of your marketing to reflect stories in a way that actually resonate with readers. And then we'll also discuss why it's okay to be a tool in your marketing, which that's just a joke, but we'll cover that more in depth. And then we'll actually look at the sentence level. We'll look at an example from Slack, which is a company that does what I'm going to talk about really well and analyze it on a sentence level. That's going to be it. That's what we're going to talk about. But before we get too deep into things, I want to introduce myself a little bit first. So like I said, my name is Grace. I'm a copywriter, content strategist, brand enthusiast, and I would call myself also a bit of a product marketing fanatic. I have been a writer and editor for 8 years at this point. And for the last 5 or so, I've actually been working in B2B SaaS companies at the enterprise level. Well, my entire career has really been in smaller startups, less than 50 people that have big dreams and big goals and are really excited about sharing them with the world. So I currently work at a company called Hyber. It's based in Amsterdam. It's a new space startup. So it's an industrial Internet of Things company. But before Hyber, I actually started my own agency called Rhubarb Copy, which was specifically for these small B2B startups that are selling enterprise SaaS software. And over the last 5 years, I've been watching this industry grow, and I've come to realize and be really excited about B2B because I think it's one of the most exciting places to be in terms of marketing right now. There's a lot of things that are changing in the world of B2B and a lot of things that are bleeding over from consumer, like B2C marketing into B2B. And so the fact that we're all here right now and learning and growing with it is pretty cool. So a couple of things that are changing. One is that millennials are moving more into buyer positions. Traditionally, millennials have been at the lower ranks, but now finally we're moving into these kind of buyer positions where millennials control budgets, control decisions. And that's pretty exciting because millennials have a different way of looking at the world and making decisions. And as the first generation that really grew up with technology, much more technologically savvy. So with that, another big trend that's changing in B2B is that the fact that the internet is actually democratizing information, which is fundamentally shifting the sales process. So what's pretty interesting that's happening in B2B that has already happened in B2C is that people are using the internet more to do their research. So for example, in the past, if you wanted to buy a mattress, for example, you would have to go to a mattress store, speak with a sales representative there who was the gatekeeper of all of the knowledge about, okay, this mattress is made out of this material and that's what you like, or that's what you should be looking for, and who could help you understand the different pros and cons of different types of mattresses. Versus now, as a consumer, you can do all of your research online and then also order the bed online. So that's something that's been a big trend on the consumer side of things, and it's also starting to happen in B2B. People are really going to Google first. And the trend that I expect to change in B2B is that sales cycles will shorten because people are just doing more searching online, which is a huge opportunity for marketers like you and me. And then finally, another interesting trend that's happening is that subscription models, and again, I think that all B2B is affected by the first two trends, but I come from the SaaS perspective, but subscription models are becoming more common and really practical with the changing pace of technology, which means marketing has to change a little bit to be more salesy for subscription model businesses, and buyers are now open to that. So all of it makes it really exciting place to be. And what's cool and why we're all here today is because storytelling is really at the center of it all. Storytelling has long been a big part of B2C, and it's now coming more into B2B, and it's pretty phenomenal. So first I want to talk about why storytelling actually matters. Storytelling is this kind of word, and that it means a lot it means different things to everybody, but it does matter, and for better or for worse, it has become a buzzword, but I want to explain a little bit about why it is this buzzword. And I want to do that by opening with a quote from Joan Didion, who is a phenomenal writer. In her essay, The White Album, she opens with the line, "We tell ourselves stories in order to live." And I actually hate that quote because it's been ripped from the context of the essay in a lot of senses. But if you continue reading, you'll see that she actually writes, "We look for sermon in the suicide, for the social or moral lesson in the murder of five. We interpret what we see, select the most workable of multiple choices. We live entirely, especially if we are writers, by the imposition of a narrative line upon disparate images, or at least we do for a while." So what she's trying to say here is that stories matter because stories are how we interpret the world around us. Stories are how we make sense of what's happening to us. Humans are the only animal that we tell ourselves stories about ourselves all the time. No matter what it is that we're doing, there's always a story around it. You're never just walking down the street. You always left your apartment building to go down to the street. You left for a reason, because maybe you had a long day at work and you need to clear your head. Maybe you're walking to the supermarket to go get something. There's always a beginning, a middle, and an end in this narrative line. If we didn't have that narrative line, we wouldn't have a way of comprehending what's happening to us. So to illustrate that, I want to tell you about the last time that I went to the supermarket, and I want you to think about the last time that you went to the grocery store. So right now for me, I actually live in Amsterdam, but I'm in my hometown of Denver, Colorado right now. And I went to the grocery store. This is a simple act 2 days ago with my mom. And we went to one that was pretty close. It's pretty close to the school that I went to growing up. And it's this kind of place, there's a super crowded parking lot that you can never find a space in. You always have to drive around, and it's a bit of an adventure to find a space. And then when you get in there, it's a huge supermarket. There's a pizza bar, and you can go up and you can look at like the ooey gooey pizza behind the glass counter. And it's a really special place. It's somewhere that in high school, I would drive there and try and find a place in the parking lot before I had to go back to school before the bell rang. And in elementary school, my parents would come and pick me up and take me out for lunch, and we would go there. So the reason I'm telling you this is not to like tell you about my travel adventures in the exotic Denver, Colorado. It's to illustrate 2 points. And the first is that every story has context. So We didn't just go to the supermarket to get stuff for dinner. By the time we left, I felt like I had touched a bit of my childhood, which made it a special experience. And we bought groceries, we came home, and then we made a nice dinner and we watched TV together. But the second point, and which is perhaps more important for today's conversation, is the perspective. So I was telling you about the grocery store, and I was telling you about it from my perspective, because I am ultimately the hero of that story. I was the person who drove around looking for a parking space. I was the person who was standing in front of the pizza, looking at it and wondering which one I should get. So it's all about the perspective. And that's important because, and one of the key things I want you to take away from this presentation today is that stories are always told from the hero's perspective. And if it's your story, you're ultimately the hero. If I'm asking you about when you went to the grocery store, you're going to be the hero. Whether you need to go and get tomatoes because your mom wants to make a big lasagna and she needs them, you're the one who's going to go get that ingredients. And as part of a story, you're the one who has to go through the ups and downs of achieving the ultimate goal. That's the same for the same is true for your customer. It's for your same is true for your prospects. We're always, as humans, we only have one lens to view the world through, and that is our own. And we're always telling ourselves stories about ourselves. So to bring this back to B2B, which is ultimately the goal or the topic of today's conversation, I want to talk again about marketing in general, because good marketing is good storytelling. And this is surface level. Marketing is storytelling. And common wisdom says that you need to tell the right story around your product to attract people to your business. And in a lot of ways, this makes sense. It is true to an extent, but there is a fundamental problem with this line of thinking. And that problem is that you're ultimately telling the wrong story. By thinking about how can I create a story around my product that attracts people to my business, you're setting yourself up to be the hero of the story. But the reality is that the person on the other side of the screen, your buyer, your prospect, your customer, they're telling themselves a very different story. And as a marketer, your job is to figure out how you can figure out what that story is and how you can insert yourself strategically into their narrative. The only story that matters in B2B, and this is really in marketing in general, but today we're talking about B2B, but the only story that matters is the one that's going on in your prospect's head. Your customer doesn't really care about your why. At B2B enterprise level right now, especially in the very beginning of the conversation, they don't really care about your why. They don't care about how innovative your company is. Like, these things are important, especially when it comes to branding, but for pure marketing and pure storytelling around products, they care about solving a problem that they have. And your prospect is always the hero of their own story. We're talking about people and their jobs, and people care about their jobs. Otherwise, they wouldn't be looking for new solutions on how to make their lives easier. And your hero, which is your prospect, they're the ones who have to go through the ups and downs. Maybe they have to learn a new skill. They have to confront their insecurities. They have to believe in this problem and the solution that they're trying to find, and they have to stand up for their ideas. But ultimately, they're the person that has to make this journey. And they need tools to help them get there, not solutions. And this is another big key thing that I want you to take away from this presentation, is that your hero, which is your customer, is looking for a tool, not a solution to their problems. So if they're climbing a mountain, they are looking, nobody's going to go climb a mountain butt naked. They're going to get helmets, they're going to get ropes, they're going to get specialized shoes and axes, and they're going to get the special equipment they need to achieve their goal. But if you were to propose them an escalator that took them to the top, they might not be interested, because that's just not what they want. So that's why I want to say that when it comes to B2B marketing, I think it's okay to go ahead and be a tool. You need to give your prospect what they need to achieve their goals and their dreams, and position your product as a tool that they can use to get there. And if you do that, if you can position your product as a tool, not as a solution, then your prospect is going to feel like you understand them better than anybody else on the market. So finally, I want to look at a practical example, which comes from Slack. And I want to look at this sort of on the sentence level because I do come from a copywriting background. So this bit comes from Slack's paid plans. And I think it's really interesting because it's such a short piece of copy. I think this was from their homepage. And it's a way to try and get people to move from the paid version of Slack, which I'm sure we're all aware of. It's a pretty basic. You can't actually see, your history is deleted after a while. It works, but it's not great for actually a business. So this is ultimately trying to get people to buy into the paid version of Slack. And so looking at this from a sentence level, the first sentence says, get more out of Slack. And what I like about this headline specifically is that it's giving the person who's reading this, so me as a potential buyer, it's giving me agency. So I'm able to get more out of Slack, which is a tool that I'm probably already using. But Slack could have very easily said, we help you grow, or we make work move faster. You can get more, we help you get more out of the tool. But what I like about here that they've done is that they're giving agency to the person who's reading this and saying, okay, you can use our tool to actually get more out of, if you upgrade, you can get more out of this tool. Then they move into work moves faster with unlimited messages in search, external partners and channels, and more. Again, so what I like here is that they're positioning, they've figured out, okay, what does this prospect ultimately want? They want work to move a bit faster. They don't want to be stuck in email chains. They don't want to always be on the phone. They just want to be able to send their colleague a message and have them respond whenever they need, whenever is convenient. So they figured out what this goal is for the person. And then they're showing them how the features of this tool help them get there. So work moves faster with unlimited messages in search, which is something that people are clearly looking for. The ability to go back and we've all used Slack, the ability to go back and find something that your colleague said months ago is invaluable. External partners and channels, that's another feature that is it's baked into this tool that somebody can use to achieve their goals, but it's not actually a solution to their problem. It's just a bit of a semantics. It might seem like a small shift in semantics, but it's actually a big shift in mindset. And so all somebody has to do to get the most out of this tool is to just upgrade. So to wrap it up, we've learned a lot today, and I went through this kind of quickly, and there's so much to be said about this topic, but there's if you get nothing else out of this, there are 3 things that I want you to take away. So the first is that storytelling matters because stories are how we interpret the world. We use stories on a daily basis to make sense of everything around us. We use stories to contextualize everything that we're doing, and it's just a part of being human. The second thing that I really want you to take away from this is that your customer is always the hero of their own story. So your customer or your prospect is telling themselves stories about themselves, and they're always the hero of it. They're never the lovable sidekick. They're never the damsel in distress. They're always going through the trials and tribulations of getting to their end goal. And the final thing I really want you to take away is that your prospect wants a tool that helps them grow their business or grow their career. They're not looking for a knight in shining armor that comes in and saves the day. They're looking for a tool that understands the problems that they're having and that they're struggling with, and offers a way to make life easier and to help them achieve their ultimate goal. They're not looking to go straight to the end. They're trying to find the tools they need to make their lives easier. So storytelling matters because it's how we interpret the world. Your customer is always the hero, and your prospect wants a tool. Those are the 3 things that you really should take away and that I have come to believe about B2B storytelling in the last several years. So that is it. Yeah, if you can tell the right story, if you can figure out how to position your product as a tool and tell the right story, your B2B marketing in this, if you can build funnels around this idea, that you're really going to be unstoppable. So that's actually it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me. If you want to stay connected, you can find me on Twitter, Hey Grace Baldwin. And yeah, I'm excited for the Q&A. Let me know if you have any questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I love just breaking it down from the beginning and then seeing an example of Slack really in real life, because I'm sure we've all seen that screenshot of our own and probably didn't think about what went into that process. I have a couple questions lined up, but I also see them coming in through the chat. So Chris, as a personal favor, I'm going to let you have your question first. But Chris says, can you say more about why you think B2B and SaaS brands should stay away from the "we help" messaging specifically? It seems like tools help him do lots of things that he wants to do, but he's still the one who has the agency.
Yeah, so you can definitely, so I think that there's a fine line. I think that you can say we help, I think with Slack, it could be something like we help people make their businesses move faster, or we help make communication easier within your business. So I think saying we help, but I think that my hesitation with it, and this is something that I learned 10 years ago, is that people are a bit reluctant to receive help. And so for me, maybe it's also a personal thing, but whenever I see we help, I want to be the person, I want to help myself. And this, again, I'm a very stubborn person, so maybe it's a personal thing, but that's my struggle. That's my personal opinion on the we help language. I would rather say we empower people to make communication easier.
Yeah, and I think I had a follow-up question, especially when you're talking about kind of the changing of the guard with millennials as the buyers, really any generation. We're all being influenced by an entirely different world. It's like everything starts over every 10 or 15 years. So I'm really curious, as we see different people getting into the buyer's seat, how do you see those stories changing, or how do you see us borrowing from B2C a little more? Or do you see any trends in what those stories are and how we personalize that when we're changing roles within a company?
Yeah, so that's something where I think a huge trend in B2B, and something that's really exciting and that we didn't really touch on in this presentation, is the role of branding in B2B. If you look at Klarna, I think is a really good example. They're a B2B payments company, and they're really adopting like a B2C approach, and they have Snoop Dogg as one of their investors. And I think in the last year or so, they released a B2C arm as well, but before that, they were very much adopting this sort of like B2C style of branding. And I think that millennials are more attuned to brands. And if you're given two options and there's one that is well branded and one that just is not, I think people will go for the well branded option. And this is starting to bleed over into B2B. So branding, I think, is something that is really going to be a huge trend in the next 10 years, because people want to work with brands that pay attention to detail.
I love that. Yeah, and really hearing that what people value is changing. So you need to stay close to that.
Yeah.
While you're writing for them. And if there's any other questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat. I can keep going on my list because you have inspired a lot of questions to me. You mentioned context, like so much of storytelling is about having the context of what people are experiencing when they're coming to that page. I'd love to hear what you think is the best way to get that context, especially it almost feels like B2B is revisiting the customer persona and really how we make those and how effective they really are. So if you're maybe on the newer side or intermediate side and you're trying to break into an industry and get that context, what are some of the ways you would do that?
Yeah, so context comes down to, there's a couple of different things. So you have to, ultimately it comes down to a lot of research, and you have to get out and talk to your prospects and your customers. You have to, and what you want is you want to understand what kind of their status quo is right now. What are they doing? What is their work? What do they like about their job? What do they hate about their job? And what frustrates them? And then you also want to understand what they want. So, and ultimately this all comes down to whatever the solution is. That someone could want ice cream, but you're not selling ice cream. Like, you have to be a bit strategic thinking about when it comes to your product, but you have to figure out, okay, what do they want and why can't they get it? So do they want to cut costs, or is that a more effective message than increasing profitability? And that comes with interviewing your prospects. And then the other thing that you really also need to know, which I think a lot of people overlook, is you need to understand why somebody is thinking about this right now. So what is driving them to actually start looking for a solution now? If they're looking, if it's a good example is something like accountants who, tax season comes every year, and they might see an increase or an influx in leads in December when people are starting to think about, okay, I actually need to do my taxes. So you have to understand, okay, what's happening in their world that makes them open to conversations now.
And I'm on a crusade to end the introduction that is just blank is important. Here's why. So that idea that you need to know what they want and why they want it and why they want it now, like all of that is what makes something jump off the page when you start. So I think for
absolutely
long form case studies, all of that stuff.
Yeah, and you have to know where people are coming, like when, and more specific to writing too, you have to understand, okay, where people came from. What did they just see when they landed on this page? And how do you match your message to what they just saw from the headline? And then, where do you want them to, and also where do you want them to go at the end of this? So you have to also do some journey mapping.
Perfect. And Bethal is saying, storytelling, does that mean showing that you understand your prospects' intentions and challenges and showing you how you can enable the hero's processes? I think that's what we're saying.
Yes, I would say yes. It's understanding, okay, what mountain do they use? It's showing that you understand what mountain they want to climb and that you have the right shoes to help them get there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Grace.
Yes, thank you, Sarah, for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been really informative, and I feel like just ripping a little bit at the seams of things to let people in and to let bad ideas out, I think is what it feels like. So Grace, Diane, everybody who's attended, thank you guys so much.